Before you continue this video, hit subscribe to Billionaire Story Raw right now, because on this channel, we reveal how the world's richest people built their empires, the secret formulas they used, and how you can grow too. Real stories, raw truth. Subscribe to Billionaire Story Raw, and let's continue.
By the age of 30, Jeff Bezos had reached the top of Wall Street. As the youngest senior vice president at a major hedge fund, he was earning a massive salary and managing billions in assets. Then he walked into his boss's office and quit. He was leaving it all behind to sell books on an early version of the internet that most of the world didn't even know existed. His peers and his boss thought he was making a mistake. They saw a guaranteed fortune being traded for a bookstore that didn't have a single customer. Understanding that choice requires looking back at the foundation he built long before Wall Street, starting with a toddler's curiosity and a metal screwdriver. Jeff was born in Albuquerque in 1964. His mother was 17, his biological father was gone within a year, and the family lived without enough money to pay for both a phone and an apartment. Stability arrived with his adoptive father, Mike Bezos. Mike had fled Cuba alone at 15, with nothing but a jacket his mother stitched together from old cleaning rags. He worked his way through an engineering degree, providing Jeff with a baseline of extreme resilience. As soon as Jeff could walk, he began trying to dismantle the world around him. At 3 years old, he used a screwdriver to take apart his own crib because he had decided he was ready for a bed. He spent his childhood building bedroom alarms, constructing robots, and engineering an infinity cube out of mirrors and spare parts. If he wanted a tool or a toy, he built it himself. Summers were spent on his grandfather's Texas ranch, where there were no neighbors or televisions. He spent those months repairing heavy machinery and fixing broken windmills. These years established a permanent mindset. If a system is broken, or if you lack the resources to buy a solution, you build it. He took that mechanical mindset to Princeton, earning degrees in electrical engineering and computer science before moving into the quantitative systems of elite finance. This chart shows the metric that stopped his career in 1994. Internet usage was growing at a rate of 2,300% per year. He analyzed 20 different products that could be sold online and crossed them out one by one based on their logistics. Books were the only category that could offer a selection no physical store could ever match. To decide whether to leave his job, he used a regret minimization framework. He imagined himself at 80 years old and calculated whether he would regret the failure of a startup or the safety of his current career. Once the calculation was finished, he moved to Seattle. He started Amazon in a garage, packing boxes on a concrete floor alongside his wife and a handful of early employees. His exit from Wall Street followed the logic of his model. He had identified a shifting system, assessed the risk of regret, and followed the resulting data. The machine he built scaled immediately. Within 30 days, Amazon had sold books to customers in all 50 states and 45 different countries entirely through word of mouth. Then, in 2000, the dot-com bubble burst. The NASDAQ crashed by nearly 80%, and hundreds of internet companies disappeared overnight. This chart shows the collapse of Amazon's valuation. The stock price fell from a peak of $107 down to just $6 a share. Wall Street analysts began calling the company Amazon.bomb. Short sellers bet billions of dollars that the company would soon be bankrupt. Bezos gathered his employees and refused to panic. He focused on the underlying system. While the stock was falling, their customer retention and sales metrics remained strong. He told his team they would outlast the crash. By 2003, the stock had rebounded by 1,000%. Amazon emerged from the recession with no major competitors left standing. Jeff Bezos built a multi-trillion-dollar empire by treating business, risk, and even near ruin as systems to be dismantled, understood, and conquered.
We interact with these mundane cardboard boxes on millions of porches every single day, training us to think of Amazon as a simple retail store. This diagram illustrates a much larger, hidden reality. These glowing nodes represent Netflix, NASA, and the CIA, and they all funnel into a centralized, invisible backbone known as Amazon Web Services. By renting out computing power over the internet, that invisible backbone alone generates over $100 billion in annual revenue. A single man turned an online bookstore into a global highway for data and consumer goods, amassing a personal net worth exceeding $200 billion in the process. Look at this photograph of Jeff Bezos in his rudimentary Seattle office. To understand his empire, you have to look at the philosophy he adopted in this room. Day 1. He forces his massive corporation to operate with the hunger and paranoia of a brand new startup. The moment you get comfortable and think you have won, you enter Day 2. And Day 2, he believes, guarantees stagnation, irrelevance, and eventually death. This unrelenting psychology is the algorithm that allowed him to scale his operations across the globe. This mindset dictates extreme customer obsession. He famously leaves an empty chair in his executive meetings to represent the customer, the most important person in the room who isn't physically there. It requires decadal patience. When he launched Amazon Web Services in 2006, competitors ignored the idea of a retailer renting out servers. He ignored them and quietly built the internet's plumbing. With Amazon Prime, he conditioned 200 million subscribers to expect 2-day shipping as a baseline right, shifting the expectations of global consumers. Then he bought physical real estate. This Whole Foods market represents a $13.7 billion all-cash deal, a move that forced traditional grocers to suddenly compete with a digital giant on their own street corners. This chart shows exactly how the strategy executed. Notice the flat, often negative line stretching for 2 decades. He intentionally lost money to outscale his rivals, a gamble that eventually drove his market cap past $1 trillion in 2018. But maintaining those standards extracts a specific human cost. Former employees describe a management style defined by pressure. He would openly ask his engineers if they were lazy or incompetent, deliberately pit teams against each other, and once refused to issue bus passes to ensure workers stayed at their desks. Look at the sheer scale of this fulfillment center. That same demand for total efficiency cascades down to hundreds of thousands of warehouse workers. He built one of the most powerful entities in history on a culture of relentless standards and internal competition. This is Jeff and his wife, Mackenzie Scott. She was Amazon employee number 1, and for 25 years, they built the empire together. In 2019, that partnership dissolved after a tabloid scandal. The National Enquirer obtained his private text messages and attempted to use them as leverage. Instead of paying, he published a blog post exposing the blackmail attempt to the world. He treated the tabloid empire the same way he treated business rivals, by refusing to capitulate. With no prenuptial agreement, Mackenzie received a $38.3 billion settlement. She immediately began giving it away, becoming one of the most prolific philanthropists in American history. He lost nearly $40 billion in a public scandal, yet the machine he built was so pervasive that his net worth continued to climb. This photo of an Apollo astronaut walking on the moon sparked a boyhood obsession in the 1960s. His ultimate goal requires leaving Earth behind. In the year 2000, he quietly founded a space company called Blue Origin. He kept it hidden for years, personally liquidating $1 billion in Amazon stock annually to fund the research. You're looking at the launch of the New Shepard rocket. By building reusable rockets, Blue Origin secured a $3.4 billion NASA contract to build the next lunar lander. Here he is in 2021, celebrating with his crew after flying to the edge of space himself. He is applying the exact same long-term patience that built his retail and cloud businesses to the colonization of the solar system. Today, his net worth hovers around $239 billion. This sailing yacht, named Koru, cost $500 million and requires a separate support ship just to carry its helicopter. Here is Bezos with Lauren Sanchez at their $50 million wedding in Venice. He owns penthouses in New York, a compound on Miami's Billionaire bunker, and the Washington Post. Yet the paranoia remains. In 2025, he stepped directly into the artificial intelligence race by taking the helm of Project Prometheus. He once noted that cleverness is a gift, but kindness is a choice, and that regret is the worst currency a human can spend. By treating every single day as a fight for survival, Jeff Bezos chose scale over comfort. He built a system that now processes the data, ships the products, and manages the logistics of how millions of people live their daily lives.